Nothing could be further from the popular idea of a Scots accent than John MacDonald's lilting sing-song.
Captain Ferguson's been off and on here for quite some time.
Aye, midships.
He's captain on the Iona. The captain's got to decide whether to make the pier, just depending on the direction of wind. If it's on to the pier, it's hard for him to berth in alongside the pier. And if it's off, it's difficult sometimes to make the pier. The ferry is the main lifeline to the island.
Outsiders, people without the island, as the locals say, often think the Highlanders sound Irish. In fact, much of the Highland culture does come from Ireland. The kilt, the bagpipes, even the Irish surname prefix Mac. And on Barra, the old Highland game of shinty, very like the Irish sport hurling, is taught by the local priest, Father Colin McInnes.
When we hear a Gaelic speaker speaking in English, it would more resemble Irish, because the source is the same as regards the Irishman as it is for the Highlander, Islander, that is Gaelic. And it has the same rhythm and very often similarity of construction and so on.
Agus ma goit bonig sin a gof bekamanach alapanach and ich beschau dachertje bleerne maar na ma goit naflen ach ma goit getikada.
The English spoken here is a beautiful, sweet-sounding, rolling, soft type of English. It is a very comforting sound compared with the whiskered, fast-moving accents you get from the cities and towns.
The people of Barra speak Gaelic as freely as English, but their language faces extinction. It is in remote places like Barra that you can see the wounds inflicted by world English on a traditional local culture.
Our spirit in the Highlands and Islands is something supremely ours. We are, like all minority groups, a small freshwater loch being invaded by a huge ocean, and we are authentically Celtic, Gaelic, and have a distinct culture which has contributed a lot in the past and I'm sure will contribute a lot to our future.
Gaelic is their ancestral tongue, but even here, when the game gets exciting, they drop into English.
Go on, Dougie, go on!
Scots Gaelic has been a persecuted language ever since the revolt of 1745, led by Bonnie Prince Charlie, was defeated, when the ill-equipped Highlanders were mowed down by the British artillery at the Battle of Culloden, the subject of this early television documentary.
He stood on a knowe, the fetty sea, the snow fell on him lichtly, but in scarce 1 hour on Dromossie moor, he witnessed the murder o' his country. The hail o' Scotland's wearing black, a dressed up for the sodden. Prince Charlie chose the place himself, the graveyard o' Culloden.
In reality, the rebellion was small. But Highlanders have never forgotten that it was used as a pretext to impose the English way of life.
After Culloden, the laws that were enacted were ordained really to destroy the way of life, the language and the customs of the Highlanders and of the Islanders. The Highlander wasn't permitted to practice his language. He wasn't permitted to wear his native dress, which was something resembling what we call the kilt today. He wasn't permitted to carry arms, and it was something very significant to the Highlander at the time. He wasn't permitted to be educated through the medium of Gaelic. Consequently, it made it very difficult for the Gaelic culture to survive.
The Highland clearance has stripped the land of its Gaelic speakers. When Samuel Johnson made his famous tour of the Highlands a generation later, he noted sadly, "We came too late to see what we expected."
People were driven away out of the land altogether to Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Nova Scotia, and so many other parts of the world where we find islanders today. And every attempt was made to destroy the Highlander and the Islander as a specific cultural entity within Scotland.
Abbotsford was the home of the Scottish writer who devoted his life to fighting such a decline. Cherishing his country's lost independence, steeped in its poetry and myths. Novels like Rob Roy, Quentin Durwood, and The Heart of Midlothian have placed Sir Walter Scott's name next to Burns as a champion of Scotland and its literature. Robert Burns and a young Walter Scott are depicted here at their only meeting in a gathering of Scottish intellectuals. Both men gave inspiration to a revived Scottish nationalism, and the popularity of their work shows how literature can play on a sense of national pride. In fact, as we've seen, the reality of Highland life was often wretched, and the Scottish people traveled far and wide in search of a better future, taking not Gaelic with them, but English. One escape route for the Highlander was the British Army. Highland regiments have fought Britain's battles from Waterloo to the Falklands. But even in a Highland regiment, the language of command has always been English.
New sentries! About! Down! Sentries! Pass!
John Northcote and Callum Keane are both Highland boys from Oban, brought up in Gaelic-speaking families. Enlisted in the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, the Argylls, they're living examples of the way in which British institutions have swallowed up the Celtic traditions of old Scotland. And even in Scotland, their city-educated lowland mates, a majority of the Argylls, mock their lilting Highland accents. They refer to them by the derogatory term tuchters.
When I came down from the Highlands, I spoke with a really broad Highland accent. And they all started saying, "Where are you from?" And I says, "Well, I'm from Oban." And they seemed to say, "He's a tuchter." They were taking the mickey out of me. They were slagging me all the time.
You no say much.
I says, "Well, I'm going to have to change my accent because I don't like it."